Hey folks, Kevin here. Well, it's November 9th, 2024. I'm down in a forested area, part of Zone 5, the area that we don't do too much with. And one of the questions I got recently was asking for an update on our invasive grapevines that we have here on the property. I've been working on these for several years, and it is very challenging. And I thought I'd show you an area where I've only made some progress first here. So here's an example. I believe that these are called riverbank grapevine. Here we have the fox grapevines. But these ones here I've come through and I've already cut them off from their root section. And here's some of the dead root pieces all around here. And in some cases, I've had to tear some out of the trees. Here's some more here. An idea of the size of my hand. These aren't the real big ones. The real big ones I've gotten mostly out. There's another one here. And they get up in these trees and they can suffocate. They can completely overgrow the foliage of the trees. And unfortunately, this is an ash tree. And that's a maple, another ash there. And we also have had, trying to see if my camera's, we've also had the emerald ash boring insect take out almost all of our ash trees here on the property. So the emerald ash boring insects lay their eggs underneath the bark, and the larvae destroy the cambium layer. That's the layer just underneath the surface of the bark, and that's the vascular system composed of the xylem and phloem. And when they encompass, they girdle the tree in a sense without it, doing much damage to the bark, to the exterior surface, except for their small holes that they make. And as a result, after these trees die, and some of the vines have crossed between the various trees, when one of the trees get weakened during our our fall windstorms, which we just had the last few days, lots and lots of windstorms, and the devitalized or dead ash trees start to tip over, and the vines are intertwined amongst all of the trees. So all of these vines here have all been cut off from the ground, so to devitalize them and kill them, all along in here. Now some of the ones I haven't gotten to yet, and here's an example. So when a tree drops, the vines hit the ground, then they send down more roots. So every place that this vine is touching the ground, it's sending off more roots, and then more shoots will go up. And you can see as the trees drop, and the vines are there. But I go through and use the chainsaw and cut the vines off from the ground, but you have to keep coming back and doing it over and over again. And then they just get tangled in between all of the trees. And in some cases, I ended up taking down several trees that were just about completely dead. There might have been a couple limbs with leaves on it. But the ones that I've left to see how well they do, they don't do well. They've died. And then they're more of a hazard as well. So this whole area here was completely encompassed by the grapevines in here. And I pulled those out, and that's worked pretty well. But it's something you have to stay on top of. You have to just keep going back and dealing with. If you had a smaller piece of property, the ideal thing would be if the grapevines have destroyed a large enough area, and I'll show you in a minute an area that they destroyed. What you can do is go through, cut off all of the bases where the roots came up, remove whatever grapevine you can, and then putting a cover crop down and mulching the area. And so you're initiating competitive inhibition. You're competing with the grapevine's chances of getting the nutrients and taking off, and eventually the grapevines will lose. So here's an example of several vines here all together, and this is an area I cleared out. All of these are cut off, but some of these trees are still alive, so I'm not pulling the vines down. But when they're a hazard, I do take the trees down. We'll go up to an area. Now, that whole area over there, there's only a few grapevines left over there. So that I was pretty successful with. Most of the area up in here, I was successful with as well. So getting them earlier on really makes a big difference. The riverbank ones, where they love going into the where the more moist soil is, well, those are really tough. Those vines are really tenacious. So we're going to go up to an area to show you what that looks like. So this whole side I have a lot more work to do. This side I've gradually been working on it. These are all hugelkultur pits where all the grapevines are buried all along in here. This area up in here, I've got a lot more work to do. A little bit more over here as well. But I got to be real careful because the number of dead trees that are still standing make it really dangerous to mess with these grapevines. You may be able to see, this is a clearing area. Be able to see some of the grapevines still up there in the tops of some of these trees. But they're dead. So this is the wood yard area where I work, and I cut and I split wood here. I made several videos. This was all completely overrun with the grapevines. Just terrible. I've taken out 90% of the dead ash trees and apple trees in here, and everything's buried underneath this whole area here. All those large hugelkultur pits. And a hugelkultur pit is a term that I use instead of hugelkultur mounds. It's piling up dead tree woody material and then putting soil over the top of it and growing plants in it. That was too much for me to manage because weeds would get in there. So I opted to start digging trenches, deep trenches, big holes, big pits, and then putting all that organic material that I no longer wanted. Like, it could be old dead trees that aren't good for burning firewood. It could be all the tops, all the root balls, and certainly all of those grapevines. So this whole area here underneath our feet is all hugelkultur pits with mostly grapevines. If some of the wood was good enough, for burning, I stack it over here, and then we cut it and split it. But here's an example there of some of the grapevines in the trees. And the thing is, in the spring, you start to see if they're leafing out, or if you see them climbing up a new spot, you got to go after them and cut them off. Now, if you cut them off and you see that all the foliage dies back from the grapevine, but the tree still looks good, just cut it off. Like this one here is cut off, so this maple's doing well. This would just decompose here. But that's probably 3 to 4 years ago I cut this one off, and it takes a while for them to break down and actually start disintegrating and falling out of the area. So That whole area over there, I've got a lot more work to do, all down close to the large beaver pond I've got to do. And then each year I've got to come through and make sure I'm catching all of the grapevines that are starting up. They are tenacious and they're tough, but they are manageable. Many people use herbicides to kill them. I don't like using any of the herbicides or pesticides, so I don't use them here. But be very careful if you got those. If you've got ash trees, be really careful. Don't think you can grab a hold of them with a tractor without some protection on you, and you need a hell of a lot of protection, because when these trees come down, even just a 4-inch log could kill a man easily, dropping from those heights. So just be real careful if you're dealing with the grapevines. But I'm pretty happy with the success we've had so far, but it's going to take me another 10 years to get this property completely set. And then we have the same thing on the new property over on the other sides of the beaver ponds, which I've started working on. There's still a ton of dead ash trees over there. It's such a shame. I wish all these ash trees could be put to good use, used for axe handles or whatever, tool handles. But it's the way things are. So that's our update on our grapevines, the challenges with them. We love grapes. Our Concord grapes are fantastic, but these fox and riverbank, wild grapevines are a bit much, especially if you got another problem with trees. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them below. Stay safe, take good care of yourselves, and when you're in the forest, do it safely. Bye-bye now.